Someone the other day, when I was talking about everything that was happening with COVID-19 and with our self-isolation and now the stay-at-home mandates that are happening all across the state and the nation and the world, someone said, we're all in the same boat. And I think they're right, but also at the same point, like, we have so many different experiences as a congregation. And so for some reason, it's been sitting with me these last few days that we're all in the same boat. As I've been talking to some folks are very lonely. They have loved ones who are not nearby. They're not in self-isolation with them. And so they just have exceptional levels of loneliness in a time of quarantine. Well, at the same time, we have several folks in our congregation who would love to have just a moment of silence with kids being home and with family members or roommates being ever present. We have some members of our congregation who are feeling just stability in this time, feeling peace, as though they can take a big, deep breath and just to enjoy the beauty of springtime. Well, there are other people in our congregation who are feeling exceptional stress. Some folks who aren't getting any sleep, some folks who have been laid off and are feeling very insecure in terms of making ends meet. And so in this way, we have folks whose blood pressure is rising and others in whom their blood pressure seems to be lowering. And at the same point, we all are in the same boat. On a given Sunday, we all show up into our community from a bunch of different perspectives. One of the interesting things that I find is that the nave, which is the area of the sanctuary from the chancel into the back of the sanctuary, which is like in our sanctuary at North Decatur, it is where the pews are with the green carpet. Nave, which is where the people in the congregation are in the sanctuary, comes from the word boat. And so in a way, when we show up on a Sunday morning, even though we have a multiplicity of backgrounds and experiences and things going on in our minds and emotionally and physically, we're by just the symbols of our space on a Sunday morning when we gather, we are all recognizing that we are on the same journey, that we're all in the same boat, that we share together in the wonders of life together. And I think that same thing is true for us now, even though we are apart from each other. We're in this time of, really exploring what does it mean to be in community when you're not in the nave together, when you're not in the sanctuary, when you can't hug someone, when you can't shake their hands or look into their eyes without a camera in between you and ask, how are you doing? Without Sunday morning, without small groups or Sunday schools in person, what does community look like? And I think that's an invitation that we're creatively and boldly being invited into, even though the differences and the uniqueness of our experiences seem to be even more vibrant and colorful in this season of COVID-19. It reminds me of a piece of scripture that we often go to when we talk about community, and it's Acts chapter 2, starting at verse 42. So again, the book of Acts, chapter 2, starting at verse 42. And we go to this one all the time, right? When we say, what does it mean aspirationally to be in Christian community? And these are those words which you may recognize. The believers devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching, to the community, to their shared meals, and to their prayers. A sense of awe came over everyone. God's performed many wonders and signs through the apostles. All the believers were united and shared everything. They would sell pieces of property and possessions and distribute the proceeds to everyone who needed them. Every day they met together in the temple and ate in their homes. They shared food with gladness and simplicity. They praised God and demonstrated God's goodness to everyone. The Lord added daily to the community those who were being saved. And I invite you to explore those words a little on your own. Just ask, what does that sort of community look like? It's the community that we aspirational feel ourselves pulled into all the time, to share all things in common, to be vulnerable with one another, to be on a common journey together, to plumb into the depths around us together as a community, to care for those around us. And so often we do see it as we need to be in person to do those things, but in regular times, this also leaves out the Monday through the Saturday parts of our experiences, the parts outside of Sunday mornings. What are we doing? How are we being in community outside of those times, which applies so much to us today in COVID-19? I think it's a helpful reminder, and I just want to kind of end on this point, that a few chapters after that really beautiful piece of scripture, we see in chapter 8, halfway through verse 1, these words: "At that time, the church in Jerusalem began to be subjected to vicious harassment. Everyone except the apostles was scattered throughout the regions of Judea and Samaria." There's this interesting thing that happens in the beginning of Acts where everyone is gathered. It's this aspirational understanding of who community is and how we share things together and how we care for people. And you immediately see that everyone is scattered out, connected together, but somehow scattered throughout a region, unable to be with each other at all times. And I think it's, again, this invitation before us today for us to see that we are creatively being invited to explore how in our own times, when we feel scattered apart from one another in the wilderness, how do we be in community? How do we lift one another up? How do we support one another Monday through Saturday of every week beyond COVID-19? How do we be with one another when we are struggling? How do we be vulnerable to share that we are struggling? And how do we provide gifts to one another in this time? We really are, I think, even now, apart from one another, in the same boat. And I think this season might actually help us just to understand that a little bit more clearly. So my invitation for you is to find community in this space where we can't see each other face to face. Maybe that's the phone tree that we're setting up. Maybe that is one of the small groups that we're doing through video conferencing. But maybe it's a friend that you're not in connection with through the church, who in this season there can be a moment of depth and vulnerability with. Above all things, know that we are in this together and we are here to support one another. Take care.